Welcome to this morning's, we're trying a different concept this year, Ragtime University. We've already had our first two segments this morning. The part before Ragtime, 19th century classical music development in America. We just finished with Ragtime era. This is now Ragtime 103. If you were looking for Econ 101, that's down the street at Fitters. So. So, no tweeting from here. Tweeting this week has been a disaster in this country, so we're all right. So, I'd like to introduce my guest professors today. Our guest professors. First off, we have Dr. David Mazak. Owe him the respect of his doctorate, which is actually in veterinary medicine. Animal husbandry, so whatever. You've never been caught at it, right?
No, never.
Okay, that's very good.
Have you ever facilitated a divorce?
Don't let me take your temperature is all I got to say.
And a guy who's got a black belt in Tatomisms, and that would be Dalton Reidenhauer.
Hello.
Who I knew Dalton before he could grow a beard, much less have gray in it. It's great. So let's quit
People are
comparing
still
beards.
calling me young. I don't get it.
So anyhow, our discussion today in this is what happened to ragtime after the original ragtime era, which we're talking roughly 1897 to 1920. And it started to disappear from the American landscape. There were changes, or did it disappear? I don't know. We're going to discuss that today. So if you weren't here for the first two sessions, this will be on YouTube at some point in the near future, and I think if you check with the scottjoplin.org site, you'll be able to find that. So, but it's not going to help you too much with the quiz. We have a quiz here. It's next to the door. I'll remind you as we leave. And there will be a prize awarded on Saturday night for this quiz. I'm not saying what it is. I don't know what it is. Yeah. Okay. A CD what? A CD...
CD player.
CD.
We all need one of those.
Yeah, everybody needs a CD player.
No, it's just a CD drunk.
I feel like
okay.
I'm doing NPR
Anyhow,
on Saturday Night Live, don't you?
So we just want everybody to feel comfortable with what this is and remind you, of course, tomorrow we have more seminars which will be vastly entertaining. So, and we'll get more academic, but this is about as academic as it gets. So class is now in session. So now, for my panelists, my first question, when do you feel ragtime started to evolve into the many shapes it took, including stride piano, jazz, 1920s pop, structured blues? By that I mean there were a lot of loose blues in the 1890s, 1900s, and when you get into the swing era, which of course is 1930s, blues were very structured by then with 12 bars. Bluegrass, of course, picked ragtime, and what drove all of these changes? Why don't we start with, you do the traditional jazz. So.
That's a big question, Bill. The answer to when did it start to evolve, I mean, Dalton, we're conferring before, is as soon as it was born, it started to evolve. I don't think there's any, if you just come to this festival and listen to all the piano players here, and I guarantee you none of us play the same rag the same way. And I'm sure it was the same way back then. And there's different cultural influences. You've got different areas of the country. I mean you're there. Then we didn't have television when ragtime was there. I mean, we had pianos, and that was it. And that was how the music was moved around. It was via piano. So if you never heard anybody but your local piano player, you thought that was what ragtime was. So I think it started to evolve immediately. Going into all those different styles is I think it just happened. I don't. How they were born. You have to realize it, and Dalton's a perfect example. He's fortunate. He had YouTube and things like that, and we'll get into that one a little bit later. The gentlemen and women that played these styles, they didn't have anything like that. This came out of their own brains, out of their own cultural experiences, out of their own heritage. That was also, you have to realize, the United States at that time, we were all a bunch of immigrants. We still are, but we're more purebred immigrants now than we were back then. I think it started to evolve as soon as it happened. Dalton, what do you think?
Yeah, I would definitely go with that. I guess if we want to put a marker on it, we could talk about the original Dixieland Jazz Band, which if you're not familiar with it was actually the original Dixieland Jazz Band, and they came from New Orleans up to Chicago for a brief period of time, and then they got hired in New York. And in 1917, they recorded two sides, the Livery Stable Blues and what was the other one?
Original Dixieland Jazz.
The original Dixieland One Step. Thank you. So, which was it was the first recorded jazz. Was in 1917, which coincidentally was also the year that Scott Joplin passed away.
But we should also point out what was part of the original Dixieland Jazz Step. The trio was that Tease and Rag.
Oh yeah, that they stole. But that's beside the point.
Exactly. Well, and the thing about that is when you listen to those recordings, and I have it here if we want to listen to it, but the feel is ragtime. I mean, it was called ragged jazz. I think it was kind of the term. Well, I don't know if they called it ragged jazz. Maybe it was added later. But essentially, it's not a swing feel. It is a ragtime feel, but it's
Can you turn up the computer channel a little? We're having radio interference. I apologize for that.
And so, I think that, and then of course in the early 20s, the pianists in Harlem. YouTube ads. Sorry, I don't have my YouTube Red subscription because, I mean, come on. I'm not paying them any money. Although I guess, yeah, you had the Harlem Stride pianists in the early 20s, and with James P. Johnson and Willie the Lion Smith and others that were around. So I mean, I think, with like this recording in 1917 happening in New York, and the Harlem Stride pianists playing in New York, I think that I would say that New York was, even though New York originally wasn't actually a jazz town, but I think it started to really pull away from ragtime there. Here's an example of the Livery Stable Blues. Okay, you get the idea. And in this recording, there are no solos per se. I mean, they pretty much all play together throughout the whole thing, but they are improvising, right? And even the piano language in the left hand, it's still, the piano player is still using octaves in his left hand, and still using ragtime language.
Even though there's a tuba there.
Even though there's a tuba, yes. But there's also a little bit more movement in the left hand than what you would have heard from Joplin's rag. So they're starting to pull away from starting to morph into something else.
And I should probably tell you that's the reason that myself and Dalton are here in this particular symposium, is because we cross over into the other field. We do play with traditional jazz bands, we play with jazz bands, we play with the band aspect, which is a completely different type of piano playing than just playing solo. And so what Dalton's point is that the piano player is still basically playing ragtime, but there's other instruments there with him as well. And so it's that improvisation that starts to take us away from ragtime. Although we all improvise when we play ragtime, the music as itself is not intended to be improvised. It's written down on a page. That's what it's supposed to be. And that's what these guys started to do. They started to take ragtime. You can hear that very rigid aspect that you feel, which is what we play when we have ragtime. And they're starting to take it and do what they want. And that's the improvisation. And that's what starts to make jazz. And that's what, I don't want to say it was the death of ragtime, just took the country to music to a different plane. I think all styles, if you think about it, improvisation is the...
Yeah, and I mean, if you want to talk about country music a little bit, I mean, you can listen to early Jimmy Rogers.
Late 20s, early 30s.
Late 20s. And by that time, jazz had sort of moved over into swing feel. But if you listen to Jimmy Rogers, he's not playing swing. He's still playing it's very much a ragtime feel. I have that. If you like to hear a little Jimmy Rogers.
Want to mute that for a moment, just in case there's.
Oh yeah, in case there's an ad. I guess I could have subscribed just for this thing. I didn't think about it. Well,
Okay, there we are.
Google Pixel too, if anybody's interested. And if I were to play.
I want to point out their qualifications real quickly because they were talking about context of band. Dave is not only the pianist, but largely the arranger of the book for is it the Stompers, right? St. Louis Stompers. And Dalton is an independent piano contractor. He does software during the day, but he plays with a lot of major New York artists, including Vince Giordano, and that's quite a big deal. So they're very well diversified. So you're more into the traditional jazz of the 20s and 30s, and you do a lot more of the expansive jazz. Giordano doesn't do much in the way of ragtime. He goes beyond that, right?
He does, yeah. And I played also in swing bands. I played Count Basie and Teddy Wilson and other that type of stuff.
So okay. Well, this will bring me into my next question, where I'm going to technology. Compare stride, jazz, bluegrass, country. These are all children of ragtime. Blues and early swing with ragtime. It's all their offspring, but they're diverse siblings. Bluegrass is essentially picked ragtime. Right?
It is, yes. And if you listen to bluegrass, I actually didn't really put down a bluegrass example here, but if you listen to bluegrass, you'll hear the upstroke, or whatever it is, the mandolin, right? The mandolin in a bluegrass band is constantly playing on the upbeat, right? And then the bass player is playing on the downbeat, right? Mm-hmm. And so essentially the combination of those two things, again, you have
the left hand.
You have the left hand of a rag. And there's also, of course, Irish influence in bluegrass music.
Yes. A lot of the songs were taken from shanties, land shanties. Shenandoah, oh Shenandoah, I long to see you. That's what we would call a shanty, but it's an early American melody, and a lot of these made their way into bluegrass. And if you picked black and white rag on a guitar or a banjo, it's bluegrass.
I think you play it. Well, now you need to go hear the Rhythmia. They're here this weekend. They're a string band, and they do ragtime, but they do on violin, guitar, and maybe banjo, I believe. Yes. And but once again, what you're listening to basically is bluegrass. So you're just listening to a ragtime song, and I guess we should probably tell everything. We never think about different things like that. There are different styles, but I think the most of what we're doing is it's just the way we play those styles. There are different licks, different things that you do. To us, I don't know that it really. Everybody wants to know what the difference in the styles are. I don't know that we even think about it that way, because I mean, realistically, Rhythmia is a bluegrass band playing ragtime. I mean,
I haven't heard them.
They're good. They're really good. Yeah, you should go hear them. But yeah, I think you have to realize a lot of the things, these different styles. What you call or what we call stride is just the way we play it. You can play anything in any style you want. What can we do that we could show that?
Well,
do you have
you mean over here? Yeah, I have some. Maybe we can listen just to sort of some examples of country music throughout the year. So a couple of these examples have piano in them. So this is Bob Wills, his Texas Bluegrass. So you can kind of hear the influence of ragtime. And in fact, if you listen to Teddy Wilson, who was Billie Holiday's accompanist, and also he played with Benny Goodman and another. and also amazing solo piano player. I have some examples of him if we want to listen later, but that piano style actually sounds a lot like Teddy Wilson. It's a little less refined. And interestingly enough, Teddy Wilson was from Texas, so sometimes I wonder if maybe he had an influence. If we listen to... I don't have any... If we listen to Hank Williams... So this is much later. So if I were to play in a country band, and we would play Hey Good Lookin', which I've done recently, I can play ragtime. I can play straight up ragtime language with that band, and it fits like a glove. I could also play like Pig Robbins or Floyd Kramer, or which a lot of times when people think of country piano, they think of those pianists. But really, before Floyd Kramer and Pig Robbins, you had country piano players playing ragtime. Here's Patsy Cline. I'll skip to the end here. There's a solo.
And if you stack the deck,
turn the card slowly. So
Yeah, and we do that all the time. All that lick is you've heard all of us do that lick. That lick is just this. And that's stride. That's everything. And if you play it slower, it could be blues.
Do you have a good blues example?
I could probably find one,
Okay.
but we don't need it right now.
Yeah.
So go into stride and how that differs from country and the bluegrass. What gave stride its unique character?
Yeah, stride. Stride. Now we're going to get away from the left hand because I guess that's probably where we need to go. Because if you listen to the bluegrass we just did, the bluegrass was all boom, 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 pa. What happened? Did I do?
Yeah. There you go. You're on my chord.
I'm on his chord. I hate when you're on your chord. The bluegrass is just a boom chick, boom chick, boom chick, boom chick, and that's the same way ragtime is. Which, when you listen to ragtime players and then a stride player plays right after them, I promise you're going to enjoy the stride player a lot more. Two reasons. One, ragtime is a more rigid performance discipline. Stride is more improvisation. And the left hand in stride actually becomes melodic. We do a lot more things with the left hand. The stride, I have an article, it describes it really, really well, as how the left hand developed. Talk a little bit, Dalton, and let me see if I can find that. Stretch, Dalton, stretch.
What would you like to talk about? No, I think the left hand is a lot of people, when they think of stride piano, they think about these like hot licks in the right hand, but I really think the left hand was actually the thing that was really a big change, and you start to have a walking bass line in the left hand. So whereas in ragtime it was often a march. Yeah, you want to demonstrate that, Bill? So
Ragtime would be very basic, and you as opposed to
and also octaves often went away. So the left hand was playing a single note, walking down, or maybe tenths. You hear, or tenths. Can you do tenths?
Yeah.
Yeah. Which that fattens up the sound. So, and also combined with rhythmic interest in the left hand. I mean, James P. would double his notes. U.B. Blake did that as well, which Martin was talking about last night. Right. So that little walk down, right? So we're getting away from the straight boom chick, boom chick.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah.
it's just more interesting to listen to. I mean, the left hand's almost sometimes a melody in itself if you listen to some of these pieces. Where in ragtime, although Joplin's left hands were pretty melodic, but overall, that's the main difference between stride. It's called stride, at least we think, because of the way you're striding over the left hand. There's big jumps with the left hand. But mostly what makes it different is that left hand, the movement in the left hand. We've got away from octaves. We're going to single notes. We're also playing we're also playing thicker chords, are more advanced chords in stride than we do in, we have to be careful we don't get too advanced, but it's based on the pentatonic scale, which is a 5-note scale. And we play a lot of ninths and a lot of sixths and a lot of thirds, which means probably nothing to half the people in this room. But to us, that's how we base our entire, that's what we do. We don't really do anything magical, believe it or not. It's all based on things. But like I say, so you're just seeing, it just as the country's evolving, our musical styles were evolving, and these men were amazing what they were able to do with stride, because they took things to different levels that I don't think ragtime players ever could have.
I have to move forward.
Okay, sorry.
I have a blues example if you want to hear it really
Go
quickly.
ahead.
Here, this is, I forgot I put this on there. This is He's Got Me Going, Bessie Smith, and with James P. Johnson on the piano. So you can hear James P.'s accompaniment, stride piano accompaniment behind her. Yeah. It's that little jelly roll like there was interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, did ragtime die in the 1920s, or was it like hijacked or subterfuge or something? In that regard, how would you describe its contents in the 1920s? And maybe we just did, pretty much.
Boring.
Well, I think Brian kind of hit the nail on the head right at the tail end of the last seminar when he talked about the concept of defining ragtime, and obviously we can define it in all sorts of different ways, but you can technically follow the style, or at least these influences, of the left hand doing this with the bass and the upbeat and syncopation. You can follow that all the way through, even up to now. Yeah. So I wouldn't say it died or was hijacked. I mean, it's according to U.B. Blake, everything was called ragtime, and so I mean, I know a little less about that particular thing, but I could see why everything would be called ragtime, even because, I mean, if you think about it now, we have pop, we have rap, right, and R&B, and if you listen to R&B and rap in the 90s, it's a heck of a lot different than R&B and rap right now. And so but we still call it R&B and rap
and rock
and rock. I mean, look at rock music. Come on, okay. So at the time when you're living in it, it's a different experience than whenever historians look back upon it, I think.
Well, I've always contended for decades now that other than, let's say, symphonic film scores, we're looking at Danny Elfman, John Williams, Michael Giacchino, everything else can be traced back to ragtime. Rap can be traced back to Maple Leaf Rag. When the lyrics came out to that was a rap song. That was bad, right? Gangsta. Yeah. Oh, go away, man! I can hypnotize this nation. I can shake the earth's foundation with a Maple Leaf Rag. And so, almost all popular music we have nowadays has a direct lineage. But what John Williams writes is more from Wagner and Beethoven, obviously.
Yeah, but it's the syncopation that has always made ragtime important. And I was always told that was what made ragtime uniquely American, was the syncopation. Although there was syncopation in other musics at the time, you can hear it in some classicals, you can hear it in all kinds of things. It was all those influences coming together in this country, the African American, the South American, the European, all coming together, and then they just put it all together. And it was a syncopation that made ragtime uniquely an American music. And it is, I do believe it is the first uniquely American music. I tell kids when I do school talks, we would not have rock and roll and rap if we didn't have ragtime. Right. It started everything. It was the basis for what made it. Think about a 3-chord rock and roll song. It's a 3-chord blues song. It's a 3-chord bluegrass song. It's the same thing, just played in a different style, with different instruments, with different sounds, different voicings. It's all just, I mean, we're getting a little musical. It's difficult to explain some of these things to you unless you're doing those things, but
I can do a good demonstration, actually,
that's why we brought him.
of an example.
And essentially, yeah.
So, if I like to talk about the endings of the endings of a hot jazz number with a band are kind of your stock endings. You have a single or a double ending. They're exactly the same as in country music. So I can demonstrate that. So if I'm playing a hot jazz number, right, I can end it. Right, hot jazz. Or if I'm playing country music, I could go. Okay, and so as musicians, when we are put to the task of playing different styles, you can often pull from the things that you already know because there is this common language that threads through all the different styles, and whether it be the endings, the structure, the blues.
If we're looking at blues, W.C. Handy is Robert Johnson, is Chuck Berry, is Brian Setzer. I mean, it's blues is blues is blues.
Blues is blues. That's right. It was once officially said that all blues are the same.
By the Library of Congress. We're
By the
not going
Library
to
of Congress.
copyright any more of them because they've all been written.
Of course, it also was once said by the federal government that jazz was music written by the devil for the enjoyment of morons. Swear to God.
I mean, the blues is a funny one because I actually got into a debate with some friends the other day about whether something that is not a blues form is still a blues.
Still a blues.
Right? Nobody knows you when you're down and out. Is that a blues?
There are 16-bar blues, 32 bar.
And yes, right. But then there are also these songs that sort of fit outside of traditional blues forms.
Deep Henderson.
And really, the blues is it's more of a feel. Like if I say this is a blues song, you know to approach it differently, even if it's not a standard blues form. You know to get a little stinky with it.
Is it a ragtime song or is it a Meghan Trainor song? I mean, there's the same difference. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, but then in the traditional jazz world, we have tunes like the Royal Garden Blues and Weary Blues, which are basically blues but played at breakneck speed. So they're far from the typical sad blues, down and dirty stuff that you hear. Now, where that came from, I have no idea. But that's just that. I mean, that pretty well stopped with the trad jazz people.
Yeah.
If you play a blues now, it's down and dirty.
Well, the word blues sells, I would imagine.
That's true. That's
So
a good point.
I guess our answer on this is that ragtime didn't go away. It was just embedded in these musics.
Yeah.
And we were able to extract it like you can minerals out of dirt. So.
Yep.
Diamonds. Yes. So next question, what cultural changes or technological modes of dissemination, well, it went away, helped push this evolution? The animation is cool.
It's cool, though. I like it.
Okay, so there were cultural changes, but also technology in the 20s and 30s that pushed these changes in this music, helped it to evolve.
All right, so we're gonna since you're in class, I'm gonna ask a question of the class. And mind you, I asked this question of my kids in school talks. How did people get their music in 1900? Anybody? Teachers? How did teachers find out about it? No. I have to put you. I may have to send you to the principal for that one. You can go to church. That's true. What? Sorry. Piano rolls weren't around then. They weren't there yet.
Sheet music.
Sheet music. And how did they hear the sheet music? They heard people playing it in music stores. Piano, what were they called? Piano demonstrators or piano pushers or whatever. And most of them were women who played these. And that's how they heard about it. So now you're limited by what you hear. So if you walk past the same music store all the time and she only played Frankie and Johnny, well, I wasn't out then. That's a bad example. Like Entertainer and the Maple Leaf Rag, that's going to be the only ragtime you thought. Now, if you went up to the next town and she was playing or he was playing a different tune, that's what you're going to think's different. Then what happened? Fred made a very good point. We started to get player pianos. We started to get, and I said wax cylinders up there. We had started to get electricity. Oh my God, electricity. What would we do without it? Record players came out. Now all of a sudden, Brian touched on this, we got radio, we got television, we got the movies. Now the country could hear, everybody in the country could hear basically the same thing. And we won't even go into what's out there today. My God, you should see this list that Dalton has here of tunes. I didn't know half these tunes were ever recorded. And I mean, we can now go to YouTube and these things. That's how it got disseminated. It was the basis of technology. It wasn't that the music did anything at all. It's just that the way that we could distribute music got better. In 1890, almost every house in this country had a piano and someone in it that knew how to play piano. Now, if you find 3 houses on a block that have a piano and know how to play them, you're doing well. Why? We don't need them. We don't need that. That was how music was disseminated. So you can just see from what Dalton has right here on his computer is amazing compared to some of these tunes were in New York. Some of these tunes, like probably in the deep South, somewhere in the West. If you were in those countries and you didn't, in those parts of our country, and you didn't have technology, you would never heard them. You can hear them today.
And I wish we had time to hear them all.
Oh, but you should be.
Class is getting
so
over.
yes, the answer to the question is everything with technology, and the basis was. I have to be honest with you, it was electricity. Because without electricity, we wouldn't have computers, we wouldn't have record players, we wouldn't have anything. Well, you play our pianos because that's manual, but still, I mean, it's electricity that did it, and that's when it started to spread around to the other parts of the country, and then they could hear these things. No, these people didn't travel. They traveled from Sedalia to Joplin to St. Louis. That's not very far, and even the people in New York really do it. But then once again, as transportation got better, how do you think Fats Waller got all over the country? By train, by bus, and then on his radio show in 1938. So as technology advanced, this music spread everywhere. Not just ragtime. That's just everything. That's just basically thing. As our country evolved, so did the music, and it had to. It still is. I don't think it's not changing. I don't like it what's there now, but it's still changing.
Yeah, and I'm sure that the whole dance scene and the party scene changed whenever we could start listening to music on records.
Yeah.
You didn't have to have a band to have some sort of music to dance to. But also, I'm sure that helped the bands get gigs because it did push the music around. So.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's get to the next one. A little trickier. Name some people who are largely responsible for this shift. Pushing the music forward, especially the jazz, in the world that we know, and name some, again tricky, who still championed ragtime and chose to stay grounded in it rather than progress into newer forms of modern jazz. And I think the first name that's going to come to mind there is Jelly Roll Morton, because he got to a certain point and he stayed in that, it's his own genre, the Jelly Roll. Well, he wrote one swing song in 1938, Sweet Substitute, but other than that, he was still writing ragtime. So.
Yeah, as was U.B. Blake.
Yes.
I mean, U.B. Blake, I would say, maintained his position as the ragtime.
But Memories of You. I mean,
well, yeah,
He wrote
sure.
pop songs.
But yeah, I mean, he wrote pop songs, but he wasn't writing jazz. He wasn't writing swing music, I wouldn't say.
I think James P. Johnson and all the early stride people have to be on that list of people who took ragtime and evolved it. James P. Willie the Lion, Fats Waller, got Cliff Jackson.
Yeah, Errol Garner.
Yeah,
Earl
that's
Hines.
bring
right.
up,
We even
let's
got
bring
into
up
those.
the big name. The name. You know who I'm talking about.
Tatum.
Yeah.
Yeah, Art Tatum. I mean, Art Tatum could play stride. I mean, he was a master stride piano player. But I think he was so good that he got really bored, and so when he would play, he would really lay it down for a minute, and then he would break away from it, and his left hand would break up, and he would do all these lines and different interesting harmonic and rhythmic things.
Earl Father Hines was the same way.
Yeah, Earl Hines was totally the same way. I mean, I have examples of those if you want me to play anything.
Hey, do you have anything early and then later that we could?
Well, Earl Hines' Weatherbird, I think, is a good example with with Louis Armstrong. You know this one? Because he's playing ragtime, but the bass is ragtime still. But you know, he's really breaking away from it. But I wouldn't call that stride piano.
No, that's not
that's
stride.
quite different than what James P. Johnson was doing. And Earl Hines. I mean, yeah. Here's a Tatum example. If you want to hear some Art Tatum, has everybody heard Art Tatum before? I hope so. So here's Three Little Words. This is a really good example, I think. So, you know, you can hear that basis is still there, but he's breaking away even more than Earl Hines in the previous example.
So there were these two schools, these people who were just stuck here and we're in our comfort zone, we're not going to push it. And the others said, come on, let's move forward. So, okay.
But I mean, I think that all these piano players, even though they broke away, I still think that they had reverence for. Here's a good example. This is Errol Garner in 1964. I think this is the example I'm looking for. And you can hear him like playing stride piano. So he's doing his. So this is his signature style right here. Big here. Hold on. I know he breaks into some stride piano here.
We're buffering.
We have a slow connection. Well, anyway, yeah, I don't know what happened to it, but anyway, I think I had it on the wrong marker. But there's an example of Errol Garner, and in 1964, right, he's playing his concert, but there's a point in the middle of it where he's just playing flat out stride piano. I mean, it's like Harlem stride piano, and so you know, I don't think any of these piano players really like completely, you know, they still maintained reverence, I think, and probably still even studied the music.
Yes.
But of course, they wanted to do their own thing and they wanted to push forward.
So let's go forward to go backwards here. If the explosion of swing music in the 1930s, and we can almost point to August 1936 of it just exploding, and pop music in the 1940s, and we're talking about Sinatra and Como, and pop music could also be Glenn Miller and the like. How do you account for the 1948 revival of ragtime, which lasted about a decade? We can point to almost one event. I'll start with that. There was a musicians' strike in 1948. The music union was boycotting record companies because they wanted better pay and better distribution. So essentially, there was no new music being recorded except for radio transcription services, which Capitol did. And in the summer of 1948, Pee Wee Hunt was doing radio shows, and he was in Nashville to record one of his weekly shows for the Capitol service. And these were these 16-inch vinyl discs that had a half hour on a side. And so they still had a little time left in their session. What do you want to do? They said, well, we'll record that weird, junky version of 12th Street Rag just for a gas. And they never intended it to be on the radio show, and it got played that week. And Capitol said, well, you know, they got a lot of response, radio stations all over the country, where can I buy that? So because it was recorded as a radio transcription, and because Capitol was playing ball with the unions, they were able to release this one single of 12th Street Rag, and it became a phenomenon. And I have theories on that, but I'd like to hear why from you.
You have theories?
Okay, here, I do have one theory.
Give us your theory.
Okay, when you were growing up in the 1920s, where did you hear ragtime in the 20s and 30s? You heard it in cartoons when you were a kid. Lots of it, because you have Carl Stalling, among others, who are scoring these cartoons. Lee Hairline from doing Disney and these guys. And you hear the ragtime, it's embedded in you. Now, World War II, you go off to Europe and you're fighting, and you want something from home. You barely get this, but you come back home, and there's so much change between 1942 and 1946 when you come home. In 1948, you hear this 12th Street Rag. Oh my God, that's what Aunt May used to play, or what I used to play when I was a little kid. It's like comfort food. And all of a sudden, we have this explosion of nostalgic music and nostalgic movies. Meet Me in St. Louis, In the Good Old Summertime, anything Judy Garland. I mean, just nostalgia. So I think it was a comfort food for the soul.
Well, unfortunately, I have to agree with Bill, and I hate to tell him I think he's right, because I'll never hear the end of it. But I agree. I think it was more of something that people were. It was simple, it was happy, and we just come out of. It wasn't exactly. I mean, although we won, I mean that was, at what cost did we win? And that's, if it was your husband and our son that was killed, it was at a very high cost for you in that war. So I think the country just wanted something happy. I don't think there's anything happier than Ragtime at played. And once again, now we're talking people. Now we're going into the Joe Fingers Cars, the
Lou Bush.
Lou Bush, but Joe Fingers Car and. Johnny Maddox and
Delwood, who's country and ragtime.
Yeah, that's
together.
true. That's true. So I mean, all those people, the Ragtime revival, and the striped vest and the straw hat and the spats and everything like that. Those were just caricatures. I don't think that they really wore that in the 20s, but that's what it was. And unfortunately, to this day, that's what we remember because of the dissemination of the material. I mean, how many of you had records that had those pictures on the front of it? I mean, I know I did. So that's why I play ragtime. So I mean, Willie the Rock Knox, who was actually Dick Hyman, was also one of those guys. So yeah, I agree. I think it was a combination of it was kind of the perfect storm. It was a combination of the fact that the music was, people knew it. It was songs people still knew. They would have been 40. They could have been 15. Yeah, they would have been in their probably 40s to 50s. So they would have remembered all that music.
And also, this is the year that in 1948-49. When they started using magnetic tape to record, and that made a big difference in the fidelity. And it was also the year that vinyl 33 1/3 records started to come out, so you could put 4 pieces on a side back then. Yeah. So it was the technology.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was just a perfect storm that allowed ragtime to revive. We're waiting for that storm to happen again. It hasn't. It happened back in 1972 with, of course, the Sting. That didn't last a decade, but it lasted for a while.
You had something on that, or?
No.
Okay. So
You covered it. It was good.
let's advance past that and go into the late 60s. You think that the scholarly approach to ragtime starting in the late 1960s, and we're talking Vera Brodsky Lawrence, who did the Joplin thing, Joshua Rifkin, who was involved with that, Max Morath, who'd been pushing this, and who was the lady who did the I can't think of her name. Who? No, not Castle.
Over in UK?
No, but we'll get to it. Anyway, did that give it a more permanent status in American music, the scholarly approach, or was it that movie that you think pushed it forward in 1973?
Well, I think the two of you probably know more about this than me, but I know that the way I was exposed to ragtime was via that movie.
I'm thinking of Ann Charters, by the way, who was one of the first to record the ragtime slowly in 1959. Yeah.
Winifred Atwell, that's who I was thinking of. Yeah,
that's
Winifred
the British
Atwell.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, my father had seen the movie The Sting, and when I started playing the piano, he wanted me to learn The Entertainer. Of course, I think it was just like, can you learn that song from The Sting, right? Because
and we have
he
a
didn't know that
saying,
it was The Entertainer.
We have a saying in our world every time we're asked for that. "O Sting, where is thy death?"
Yeah. So, to be quite honest with you, that's the most that I know about it. My personal experience is from that movie, but
really, do you think it helped? Was it the movie, or was it Joshua Rifkin, or was it just the evolution, everything layered that helped this?
I will say my grandparents did have Rifkin's record at their house. So when I, yeah. So I heard Ragtime through Josh Rifkin as well, which I know is a separate thing.
Well, Dave and I will remember this going to Tower Records, and when we looked for Ragtime, it was often in the classical bins.
Yeah, that's true. It was. They put it. I don't know. See, I think completely different. I still don't think Ragtime gets the respect that it should. I mean, if you think, my son was looking at jazz programs. He looked at USC's, and the USC jazz program starts with Louis Armstrong. It doesn't even acknowledge Ragtime. And so I told him he couldn't go there. And he encountered that in more than one place. And once again, my son and daughter have definitely grown up with some eclectic musical tastes, and they still do. But I think the scholarly approach to Ragtime, I don't think it did anything for the music at all. The movie did, and the only reason the movie did it was because people just, I think they just had been exposed to it and hadn't heard it for so long. I mean, I have little kids that they come in and to a school talk, and they think this is the greatest thing since dirt, because one, I'm actually pushing the keys down and making sound, and they think that's just amazing. But I promise you, they're not going to go home and tell their mom and dad they want to play Ragtime. At least I haven't had one yet that's done that. So I don't think the scholarly approach did anything at all to it. In fact, I understand what they want. They wanted to try and make what Joplin wanted. Joplin wanted to make this music a respected art form so that it could be played in the huge concert halls around America. One, I don't think it ever was intended to be played in concert halls around America. I love to play at the gazebo here because you guys are 5 feet from me. I think that's the way Ragtime was intended to be played. It's not that I don't like playing. I mean, these pianos are amazing for us. I don't know about for you, but they're amazing for us. And we're happy that there's 400 people here that are listening to it. I don't think it needs to be scholarly. I think we think too much in this country. Get over it. It's Ragtime. It's fun. If you played Ragtime slow in a bar or a Bravo, your butt was on the street. There is no way this music was intended to be played slow. Not all of it, but I don't know. I don't think it did anything for the music.
Can you put that in a tweet, please? Yeah.
I had an interesting conversation with Richard Dowling about that, and he brought up the concept that if you think of a two feel, which a ragtime is essentially march, right? It's a two feel. If you tap in two, you're not tapping very fast to make the rags. In other words, like this, right? So that's your feel. That's not fast, right? But if I play the Maple Leaf Rag at this tempo, it's pretty
fast.
zippy,
Yeah.
right? So what did that mean?
That's true. Good
Was
point.
he
That's a
referring
great
to the
point.
two feel, or
Right, that's true. What his definition of fast may be different than our definition.
I
That's a
have
very
to
good
get
point.
to the last question because class is almost over. Where is Ragtime now in 2018 in terms of players and audiences? And that's a tricky question. This includes internet, iTunes, live performance composition. I want to start out by trying to make the claim, and everybody here should go out and make the same claim. Ragtime is not old people's music, and we have a lot of youth playing it. I just spent last week in Oxford, Mississippi, hearing some amazing kids doing this. We have the new up-and-comer, Daniel Sovidny, is just, he is Nathan Beasley, another one. They're both amazing, and they're not even 20 yet, and they've made a name for themselves. Adam Swanson did that when he was in his teens. So it is not old people's music, but we seem to be getting old audiences. No offense here, because I'm going to be officially old in about 8 months, but yes, I am. They send me a kit in the mail. This is
old.
here's your politics,
So you are
and
young.
here's the radio stations you're going to listen to now. All right, I'm going to get that kit, but just saying. But okay, that's where we need younger audiences. How do we do that, and where are we?
I think the internet has been a huge thing in bringing people in. I mean, I feel like the contingency of young players here have a lot to do with the YouTube videos. I may be wrong about that, but it seems to me that once Tom Warner and various others, I know Tom Warner might have been the most prolific, but there are a number of people who've put up lots of videos on the YouTube that have really spread this music around, and I think we owe a lot to that. When it comes to just young audiences in general, I will say that I play in swing bands in New York and actually all over the world, and there's a huge scene of people who are into, well, the Lindy Hop scene is one, which is particularly big, but there's also a big scene of people who love 1920s music. But what draws the audiences is dancing in like some kind of like nightlife, or you know, there has to be some sort of aesthetic associated with it. You know, it's like we can dress up, right? We can wear period attire. We can learn the period dancing. And so in New York, I mean, I play with Mike Davis's band. He calls it the New Wonders, and we're playing all music from the 1920s, and Bix Beiderbecke, and et cetera. And young audiences love it. They come out, they dance, they hang out, and so I think that
Hanging on for dear life is what you're saying.
Well-
but it's hanging on.
yeah, I mean, I would never expect Ragtime to be Kanye West or something, or Beyonce. You know, it's not going to reach that level.
And yet Lady
but,
Gaga plays it.
But it's, I would say, I guess I can put it this way: it's enough of a scene to make it feel like it's alive right now. You know, and to me, that's just wonderful. Now, granted, I'm not playing straight up Ragtime in those scenarios. I might be playing like Teddy Wilson. But the thing is, to me, it's all from the same pot, just like we've been talking about. And, you know, I still feel like I'm playing Ragtime because that syncopation is all over the place, and I get to just have fun on the piano, and so, yeah, I don't know,
Do we have any questions? We have one over here, Danny.
It sounds to me like our faculty are saying all of these are styles. They're ways to play a piece on the piano. You could take play the bumblebee, play it in a boogie style,
Right.
and then hey, I got a boogie piece here. Is that what it means when somebody says so and so wrote a beautiful stride piece?
Not necessarily.
Why not? That's my question.
Because that's applying a stride style to an existing composition, a new composition. And if you think about it, improvisation and composition are almost the same, because sometimes composition is improvising something new. If I write a unique melody, if I sat down and wrote, or if I were Fats Waller writing Ain't Misbehavin' or Honeysuckle Rose, those are separate entities. If I'm sitting down and I do the Brahms Hungarian Dance No. 5, but in ragtime, it's still Brahms Hungarian Dance. So I'm applying a style to it rather than writing within the genre something new and unique.
I think, Dan, there is no melody that is ragtime. There is no melody that is stride. It's the way we play that melody. So if Fats Waller played Ain't Misbehavin' like a Bach piece, it would have been Ain't Misbehavin' in C minor, Etude number 4. And, you know, I mean, instead of the Ain't Misbehavin' that we all know, I mean, it depends. And once again, if you play Ain't Misbehavin' as a stride piece and then play it with a swing orchestra, you're going to get a completely different feel. And my solo is going to be completely different on that piece, as Dalton would attest to that. I mean, it's not about the melody, it's about the way we play it. So, yeah, go ahead.
That's kind of my point. It's not about how you name it. It's about what it is.
Yes. Right.
If you simply sit down with blank paper and write out the notes that you would play if you're playing it in a stride style.
I recorded the Nutcracker Suite entirely in ragtime forms because it was so close. It was written in the 1890s, maybe on a different continent, but it was just so close in style, it was very easy to adapt. So yeah, you can.
I mean, if you listen to the song "You've Got a Friend" from Aladdin, oh my God, that is a stride. That's stride right there, baby. And I mean, you know, when you listen in the movie, well, from my standpoint, when I saw the movie, I immediately thought that was a stride piece.
Mario Brothers,
yeah,
the music from video games.
And, you know, Spitznagel plays the Walt Disney thing. Chim Chim Cheree can be a stride piece, but it's not. it's a piece for a musical. I mean, if I play it with my daughter singing it, I'm singing it as a waltz, chim chimney chim, you know. But if I play as a stride piece, you're gonna think, it's a stride piece, but it wasn't written that way. It's just a melody, and it's just how we play it.
I mean, I think that.
Aren't you then saying what it is depends on how it was written down first?
No.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I got you. Yeah, Chim Chimney Tree was written as a musical piece, a musical waltz in the movie Mary Poppins, and then we've made it into a stride piece. Right? Yeah, exactly. There's an intention behind it, but there is no melodic phrase that is stride, or no melodic phrase that is ragtime. There's no melodic phrase that is. There are chord changes and things that if you look at Fats, and you, once again, we're getting into theory, and that's not something that we want to do here. There are certain theories that are basically a stride piece. But then again, they repeat in swing, they repeat in bop, they repeat in. It's just the way we play it.
I mean, when I play, let's go the other way. When I play with a band and we're playing music from the 20s, right, or a swing band or whatever, I might play language from Pig Robbins, country music language from Pig Robbins, but it's all about how you inject it into what you're doing, and I think that for me to call it, for me to say, oh, I'm playing that country language right now I mean, it's not really that. It's just like, no, I'm just playing music. I'm playing music on top, you know, and I'm fitting in with what's happening right now, and so it's tough to label. It's hard to call things something other than, I mean, in other words, if we're playing a stride piece, if we're playing stride piano, it's stride piano. Or if we're playing hot jazz, but we could play all sorts of other things in the midst of that, right?
And we do.
But that's different than, you know, an actual composition. So like you know, you might take the composition and interpret it in your own way, right? But it doesn't take away the fact that the composition is a country song or a ragtime piece or whatever. I mean, I don't know. That's
a good question. I think it's.
We'll have to discuss that offline,
Yeah.
because the lunch bell's about to ring. I have one more up here.
I hadn't heard about the Lindy Hop revival, the 20s revival that Dalton was talking about. I think it's very interesting. I'm just curious if you're seeing that in other cities too, or is it?
all over the world.
Yeah, it's all over the world.
I travel to South Korea, to all over Europe. South Korea, it's insane. South Korea has the biggest Lindy Hop community per capita than any country on earth.
K-pop is Lindy
It's
Hop.
just a real short. Oh, that was terrible.
Well, we have to terminate because it is lunchtime. We
They
have
have
to reset
McDonald's
for
now.
concert. But I would like to thank Dr. David Mazak, Doctor of Veterinary Medicine, and Mr. Dalton Reidenhauer, native of Missouri, for assisting me in this.